I have always looked at fan reactions, whether they be fully supportive or negative or aggressive or whatever they may be, as passion. Fans are just passionate. I'm a fan too.
The man that had such love for this franchise that after production was over, he would go home and still stay in costume. The man that was described by his co-stars as a living, breathing Witcher Bible. Even the actress behind the character of Yennefer said that he knows more than anyone about the world of The Witcher and all the rules and regulations and the terms in Witcher knowledge. He's up there. And now he is gone. The Henry Cavill, Geralt of Rivia era has come to an end after 3 seasons, and now we are entering into the Liam Hemsworth era, which is only going to be lasting about 2, as the show is coming to a close after season 5. I just think people do not understand how much anger was in the air when the announcement was made. Now it has been 3 years, but many people were calling for the showrunners and the writers to be fired because of how horrific they put the show in its position. People don't understand that Henry Cavill was not the problem. He was the reason why a lot of people were tuning in. And the deviations from the source material, a lot of the made-up changes, the conflicts that made no sense, that is what the Witcher Netflix show is known for. And it really is sad because it had the potential to be something amazing. And that was everything the showrunner Lauren Hisrich was saying beforehand, before production even started, saying that she wanted to do this right. She wanted this to be a faithful adaptation. That's actually something that was listed originally on the Netflix Witcher description. But ultimately, that is just far from the truth. And Liam Hemsworth is now coming in because Henry Cavill got tired and he wanted to move on to try other things. Obviously, he was originally going back to his Superman role, but now in recent days he's taking on Highlander, and soon, hopefully, we're going to see him in the Warhammer universe. But specifically with Henry Cavill, a lot of people just do not understand the fact that he was committed to this show long term. Right around season 1, right when he was discussing the show, he talked about how he was absolutely committed to the Witcher 7-season plan on one condition. That was the key thing. The condition was that they must continue to tell great stories while also honoring Andrzej Sapkowski's work, and that obviously did not happen here. And that's what ended up leading to this massive announcement in the fall of 2022, in which he announced his departure while also acknowledging that Liam Hemsworth was going to be taking on the role, and he was happy and excited for him, but it was one of those PR things that he had to say anyway, no matter what. And there was shock in the air, but it wasn't too much surprise from the Witcher fanbase because of everything that had been transpiring, and also a lot of the interviews that he had given, which showed some massive disagreements that he had with Lauren Hisrich, the showrunner. All of that led to some very interesting things that followed the departure news. It was the fact that a former producer came forward claiming that some of the writers actively disliked the books and games. He even went so far to say that some of them were actively mocking the source material behind the scenes. He said it was a recipe for disaster and bad morale. You have to respect the work before you're allowed to add to its legacy. And even if you don't necessarily totally believe that remark, or if you have some disagreement with it, there's people that have been involved in this show that have actively said that they had to deviate. It was painful, but they had to deviate because they were making this for an American audience. Yes, that was one of the things that one of the producers on the show said. They said it would be too complicated if they just did a straight one-to-one adaptation, and it was because they were making it for an American audience. The simplifications were necessary. That was one of many baffling revelations that have come surrounding this show, and it really paints a negative image of the showrunner and how she wasn't trying to authentically adapt these books, but more so establish what her vision of the Witcher universe should be like. And there's been indication of that many times over the years, and it really is a departure from what she initially said when she was announced as the showrunner. Because in the early days of 2018, she said everything's going to be organically derived from the books. That obviously did not happen and has not happened. And even just a couple of years ago, she was answering criticism about the departures from the book and the fact that apparently the author, Andrzej Sapkowski, is a friend of hers, and he congratulated Lauren on season 2, and he said he watches with great joy. But Sapkowski was interviewed shortly afterwards, and he indicated otherwise. He said, "Allow me to quote Joe Abercrombie, the author, whose books are very much to my liking. Life is basically effing shit. Best to keep your expectations low. Maybe you'll be pleasantly surprised." He was asked for an additional comment. None whatsoever, thank you. to. And that was what he was answering a question about what he was looking most forward to with the future of The Witcher show. Now, the only thing that he has publicly complimented was Henry Cavill's performance. He said specifically that he even imagined the character speaking in Cavill's voice. That's how much he was in love with that performance. It's like I said, it's just very interesting how Netflix and Lauren Hisrich has been running this show into the ground, in this universe, to be fair. They have been trying to establish this as the next big thing, like on the level of Stranger Things. They had The Witcher Blood Origin. It was supposed to be this massive prequel series, and that totally bombed. There was also another spin-off that was in production called The Witcher's Rats that was described by insiders as such a disaster that it's now being simplified into a small little special that'll probably release alongside Season 4. And look, The Witcher main show has also been falling drastically over the last couple of seasons. Even when Cavill was a part of this, a lot of people just dropping out from not being interested anymore, as audience scores have dropped 67% from Season 1 to 3, and I can promise you it's going to fall even more once Season 4 premieres, especially once the very not online people find out that Henry Cavill is no longer Geralt of Rivia. And this does bring us to the new Season 4 trailer, which right now, has 114,000 dislikes, many mocking every aspect of this. And look, a lot of the fantasy that is coming about nowadays, I genuinely can't differentiate them. They all look exactly the same. Like, a lot of people have been criticizing the fact that there's no sense of geography. Nothing seems to make sense in any of this. It's just, let's diversify it because we feel like we have to. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but it needs to make sense with the universe and such. And I will just add one more specific note about the diversity of the show. The Polish identity has just been completely destroyed here. It's non-existent. It's not too surprising because Lauren Hisrich very early on indicated that she wasn't going to be doing that, as she wanted to make the show for the 190 countries, and you see that here. It unfortunately has just deviated drastically from its Polish roots, and her crew seemingly don't care about that. And yes, there's a scene, you have a scene with Yennefer's, I guess, a swords master now, I guess, and also the swords look cheap and fake in this scene, just to point out, look, it's bending. Like I said, they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on this, and I guess they can't spend money on actual swords. But indeed, we did get our first full look at Liam Hemsworth as Geralt of Rivia, and I never thought he was going to be the problem here. I definitely do see the downgrade in terms of the acting. Some people have been calling him Temu Geralt, some people saying this is what happens when you go to Spirit Halloween, and look, he has the look, it's just the acting chops that aren't up there. And I understand some people criticize Cavill because of some of the stuff he's done in recent years, but he's a good actor. You can go back to his Rome days when he was on that. And there is a drastically big difference between Henry Cavill and Liam Hemsworth, who's known for the Hunger Games, and even with that, he was not that great. He's the other Hemsworth brother, and I don't even think he's in second place in terms of acting in his family. But yeah, the comments were absolutely brutal. If the writer's intentions was to alienate the fan base, I'd say they succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Imagine all the stories and dialogue, all the fandom, all the guaranteed success, and the best cast for your lead, and then just shitting on everything and saying, who remembers the classic catchphrase, let's effing move? And yeah, that's one of the big things from this that a lot of people are talking about. And it's not just the fact that he's cussing, it's just the tone and how it comes off. Because yes, we all know that Henry Cavill did swear, but the tone of the character just feels drastically different. Like it's a completely new character. But as Forbes' Eric Kane wrote up, The Witcher Season 4's first Liam Hemsworth trailer is so much worse than we imagined, and specifically they're all highlighting this scene right here, and it's what I'm talking about. Yeah, we'll play that again. It doesn't sound like the Geralt of Rivia that we've known for 3 seasons, and I get it, you can't duplicate it, but it's quite clear they wanted to make a new Geralt of Rivia, and it massively conflicts with what's happened already in this franchise and what's been established for 3 seasons. And it's just crazy to me to know that they spent $221 million on this Season 4, and this is what they produced. This is what we're getting. The cheap production value in terms of swords. It looks like a giant action-packed mess with no concentration on the politics or care about the universe dialogue. All that is thrown to the background because big action spectacle, I guess, is what Lauren Hisrich, that's her vision for concluding this franchise, it doesn't make any sense to me. But still though, there is a universe of people that are in the anti-Henry Cavill camp. There's been a lot of people slandering him, coming up with conspiracy theories. This is one of the big ones, this Perseruna Twitter account, debunking all the lies you've been told about Henry Cavill and The Witcher, a thread, and they nitpick a lot of stuff, but they do make some outlandish claims, and this is the stuff that's been spreading for a while now. He claimed that it was just impossible for Geralt to have more lines because the story had too much of woman. That's never what he said, and the quotes they have here is the showrunner's vision, not too much of a woman. But the real highlight of this thread and the conspiracy, just to show the conspiratorial nature of these psychos that are on social media, and this account specifically, Cavill was allegedly fired for his outrageous on-set behavior and rampant misogyny. I already talked about this post 3 years ago. It was total nonsense, made up stuff coming from a dirt sheet rumor mill with no actual source behind it. And yeah, the source came from Deuce Moy, and this is what they say: well, controversial figure, let's not pretend as if her sources aren't correct a lot of the times. That's not backing, that's no proof of any of this. And they just totally lie. This whole thing is just, he was talking like a gamer, bro. The whole cast was uncomfortable. And then you look to the fact that some of them were crying when he left the show. It's just total nonsense, but this is some of the Witcher fan base that still exists and are behind the show. And they also bring up stuff about Cavill's past. They say that they talk about how his comments on the Me Too movement were disgusting. The fact that he was scared to flirt with women nowadays, I guess that's totally unacceptable to say. And then they also bring up the fact that he was dating a 19-year-old when he was 33, because I guess that's illegal or something. That's just my point. These individuals are totally crazy, and there's many of them going after Henry Cavill, especially after this new season 4 trailer. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And even some of the outlets, the Witcher season 4 trailer will make you forget all about Henry Cavill. It has not. It's done the complete opposite. Now, it should be acknowledged, since Cavill announced his departure 3 years ago, there's been a lot of confusing responses coming from The Witcher showrunner Lauren Hissrich about why Cavill left. And even recently, we got a new response from her, but first, it's important to understand in 2022, immediately when he announced his departure, she teased there was reasons why Cavill left. And her full quote was that I have a lot to say, and I think there was a lot of, we'll obviously never get into exactly why Henry left, all of the reasons, but I can say it's been a mutually respectful relationship, so please come back in 6 months when we can talk. And then 6 months later, she again explained that we had the choice to end The Witcher, and her full quote was, it was time for him and his life to move on. I think we've all been mourning this in our own way. We had the choice to have Geralt exit and end the show, but that's not something that we were willing to do. There's just too many stories left to tell. If we replace Geralt with another Witcher, we would be going fully away from the books, and I don't think that's what anyone wanted either. And the one thing that she has neglected to mention is the creative differences. She has never wanted to acknowledge the fact that Henry wanted a more authentic show to the books, while obviously herself and the other writing staff wanted to go in a different direction, which yes, is not authentic to the book and has deviated constantly the last couple of seasons. But more specifically, just a couple weeks ago, we got another response about why Henry Cavill left from the showrunner. And unfortunately, it's still more of the same. The Witcher showrunner Lauren Hissrich explained that conversations about Henry Cavill leaving were going on for a while before it finally happened. He had plans for other roles that he really wanted to commit himself to, which some people believe that is probably Superman. And for us, you don't want to hold someone and force them to doing something that they don't want to do. I think that's why it felt like a really symbiotic decision. And then regarding creative differences, Lauren is quoted in the interview saying that the phrase can mean anything these days. And again, this is just her downplaying the fact that he was dissatisfied with where the show was going with the character and just the overall storyline. But this brings us to a new interview with another producer of the show, and there's just some very eye-opening things here. They talk about their new Geralt for season 4. And they say that Geralt is not only a monster hunter, so he doesn't have to be very physically fit, but he also is a philosopher. We were lucky with Liam because it fits him. That blend of brawn and brains became the foundation for every change that shaped Hemsworth's new White Wolf, with Hemsworth adding his own imprint along the way. His voice's tone is slightly different, I'd say more than slightly, and he does have a little bit more humor. Liam loves to curse, and we've brought cursing back, which was one of the things that Cavill wasn't too much of a fan of. He wanted to be he wanted the character to be more sophisticated like it is in the books. And this producer says it all translates to a Geralt who feels sharp, funny, and more vulnerable, setting the stage for what's to come in season 4. And this is specifically the part that's really notable. It's interesting to see this change explored from a slightly different angle because our Geralt smiles a bit more. Maybe he feels a little more emotional, maybe he's a little more emotional than before, but it's also where the story goes because he discovers himself as a human again after all of those years of hunting monsters. And that is specifically what Henry Cavill wanted from the character after season 1. He specifically is quoted in multiple interviews saying this is the character that he wants it to become. This is the thing that he was pushing for behind the scenes, and for some reason having to fight with the showrunner to get. Now, there was another notable tidbit from this new interview about season 4, and this is specifically coming from Netflix's own website, their own interview team, and they talk about when Liam Hemsworth was first contacted to take on the role of Geralt of Rivia. It says Hemsworth's journey began with a phone call in late 2022. This has been since updated. This is not what it initially said. And is this, like I said, for the first day or two, it said 2020. I do not believe for a second that this was a typo. I think the Witcher team really wanted people to know that things were so messy behind the scenes that Henry Cavill had to have been threatening to leave the show as early as season 2, because 2020 is when they were filming season 2. So, and that's honestly where all the disagreements began to emerge. We had articles and news pieces such as this one: Henry Cavill rewrote Witcher season 2's big roach scene. And I think this is really notable just to understand some of the behind the scenes disagreements that were, published in PR. Like, obviously they're not going to talk about all of the messy stuff, but this is just one instance that wasn't brought to the public, in which Hissrich admitted that when she wrote the roach death scene, her instinct was to puncture the moment with a bit of meta comedy. I don't know how that fits in the franchise. She's since clarified that the actual line was not comedic at all. It was just her first instinct, but whatever. Henry was unhappy with the line, though, that she came up with, and she responded by saying, "Finally, I said, you know what? You come up with something. I trust you. You know this material so well." And he came back the next day with a beautiful speech that's at the end of Sword of Destiny when Geralt is facing death, and it's such a pitch-perfect moment. And yeah, like I said, this is just some of the disagreements that were going on behind the scenes, and it's not too surprising because Henry Cavill talked about how he wanted season 2 to be more book accurate. He wanted it to be more in line with the actual character from the books, less like the games. And like a lot of people have pointed out that Henry Cavill's Geralt, he isn't book accurate. And this is something that he was wanting. This is something that he was pushing for. And specifically, it was said that the toughest part of me was finding that balance between the showrunner's vision and my love of the books and trying to bring that Geralt to the showrunner's vision. It's about treading a line there. It's the showrunner's story, and so it's an adaptation. The tricky bit for me was finding Geralt from the books' place within that and being able to serve both as much as I could. And then in another interview, he said, as far as the preparation goes for season 2, coming into this, I wanted the character to have a closer relationship to the character in the books. I wanted him to be more book accurate. And so it was more to do with making sure and campaigning for him to sound more intellectual, more philosophical, because he is in the books, and to have an emotional side as well, which is everything they're now claiming that this Liam Hemsworth character is. Everything that he was pushing for originally during season fucking 2, rather than just being a grumpy snowman who grunts all the time. Every day I was pushing for stuff as far as prep goes, and it seems like when he was pushing for that, there must have been some massive disagreements, some massive debates that were happening between Lauren Hissrich and Henry Cavill. And even as Cosmopolitan highlights, in 2020, Lauren admitted that she tried not to hire writers who are purists of the source material, saying we need writers who are close but not too close, who love the world but aren't afraid to question it. And then she revealed Henry had sent her notes about Geralt's dialogue and the release of season 2. A lot of the notes he was sending to me were about Geralt's dialogue. Could he first of all say more? Everything came out of season 1 laughing and loving Geralt's fuming, but Henry was saying that when you read the books, you spent a lot of time in Geralt's head, so how can we put that on the page? And then in a subsequent conversation with Phil Starr, the actor elaborated on the sitch, revealing it's important for me to have the character be three-dimensional, and it's tricky to do so, as I was saying earlier, because there's a certain vision, there's a certain set of storyline and plot, and so it was about me trying to find Geralt's place within that. All of my asks and requests were along the lines of just being faithful to the source material, and seemingly there was a lot of conflict with him trying to accomplish that mission. And look, Lauren Hissrich and her production staff, they have made multiple promises over the years, like Like season 3, they said it was going to be closer to the books. It really wasn't. They also said Henry Cavill was going to have this massively amazing send-off. It really was not. And look, the changes from, this is the season 2, this is Witcher fans. Voleth Mare is not in the book. She was the main villain of season 2. It was comical. Geralt wouldn't use Ciri as bait in the books, nor did he. Ciri is never possessed by a witch. Yennefer does not lose her magic in the books. It's like paragraphs and paragraphs. These are all the changes that they made. This isn't honoring the books. This is just making a completely new story out of a universe that they do not respect. And even with season 3, we saw a character like Jaskier. He's known as being a womanizer within the books. And then for some reason he's I guess during season 3 he's in a romance with Radovid. It just does not make any sense, but this is what Netflix cares about. This is what their focus is on. And then yes, there was more paragraphs and paragraphs of changes of stuff that did not originate in the books. And this was their version, or this was their answer to them being more authentic to the books by still drastically deviating. This is why it's not surprising to know that Henry Cavill was dissatisfied with what they were producing and wanted out. And this is the stuff that they're not going to talk about because it totally destroys the narrative that they've been trying to spread for a couple of years now, which is that Henry Cavill just wanted to go do some other roles. And look, there's conspiratorial individuals online that say Henry Cavill is this evil, misogynistic person, but then you have interviews in which, The Witcher's Yennefer, Anya Chalotra, was brought to tears upon learning that Cavill was leaving the Netflix show. You also had her saying that he was incredibly professional, polite, brilliant, very experienced, clearly in the world of acting and being on set, that's big, very experienced, being a leader of a team with such grace. He cares about you, he cares about the show. And what he ultimately realized after a couple of seasons with it, it wasn't going to get better, so he wanted out. Yet you have individuals like this spreading narratives. He was never a team player and made his castmates' lives on set much harder. I can't imagine the stress. Again, it's just made up nonsense. And here we are though, with season 4, and it looks just as much of a mess as we all expected. Although now we have Liam Hemsworth, and I personally think that Liam Hemsworth's going to do a fine job with the character. I just don't think it's going to live up to at all what we had with Henry Cavill's version of Geralt of Rivia. But anyway, what do you make of season 4? What do you make of the changes that have been implemented by the showrunner and the explanations that they've been giving about Henry Cavill the last couple of years? Let me know all of your thoughts down in the comment section below. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video, or if you found any informative value. Consider subscribing for more videos like this. I'll see you later.